Enzo Seikoo Grondine has been the breakout star of the RLCS 2021-22 season. From his flashy goals to his clutch saves, Seikoo has taken Endpoint from an unfancied team to the top of the RLCS scene. But stars don't just form overnight. Like the brightest stars, Seikoo was formed under pressure. From playing in tiny amateur tournaments, to getting banned for a full season, to a long shot with Endpoint that he rode all the way to the top. This is his story.
I told you before, and I'll say it again, Seikoo is one of the best players and most entertaining players to see in Europe.
None of those things coming through just yet, but Seikoo will with a second goal for Endpoint.
Off the backboard, drops it down, and a goal for Seikoo!
That was perfection from Seikoo in the
backflip, and it works! It works from Seikoo! It's beautiful, it's lovely, it's just Seikoo!
Seikoo was born in Sarthe, near Le Mans, but moved to Saint-Nazaire on the coast of France for his schooling. His favourite activity when he was young, appropriately enough, was football, which he practiced for 8 years alongside his friends. From an early age, the love of competition and drive was clearly there. Seikoo played his first tournament on Wikipedia in March of 2020, playing the Nice Cactus Weekly 39 with Glory 4 Builders and losing in the round of 16 to a little-known team called Forest Slump, featuring a young Jack, apparently Jack, Benton. But it meant that Seikoo had been bitten by the Rocket League bug. And when open qualifiers for RLCS rolled around, he knew he wanted to take part. But then, disaster. Teammate Seikoo Quacks was unable to play the Saturday of the closed qualifier, and in his stead the team fielded young prodigy Zen, who was both unregistered with Psyonix and underage at the time. The response from the Psyonix admins was swift, with all players involved banned. Seikoo, who was just 16 at the time, would not play an official Psyonix event again for over a year. So while a host of young talents took advantage of RLCS's open format and put themselves on the map with standout performances, Seikoo was stuck on the sidelines.
Endpoint had had a disappointing end to RLCSX. After strong performances in the opening split, they'd looked to contend for places at the season-ending World Championship, but they stumbled, with early exits in the final split meaning they didn't even make the final major of the season. The decision was taken to bench Virtuoso, and a number of trials were undertaken to find his replacement.
I gotta be that king in the ring when I'm knocking him out when I'm back with the real, 'cause I am just up on the journey, you just know that I'm just going to say.
How did you come to try out with Endpoint?
You need to ask him this question. I don't really know. He just asked me on Discord if I want to do some tryouts, so I do it and he picked me after.
At first, Seikoo seemed like the classical French twos grinder, just absolutely owning people in ranked and very funny and very friendly, like most French people. Well, basically we were looking for a new third, and then we looked at the rank leaderboards. He was a twos grinder, so we decided to look at some replays and his tournament results. It all seemed like pretty promising, so we decided to give him a tryout. We didn't really see him in any 3v3 before that, so it was kind of like a shot in the dark, but...
I think we tried out about 4 people or so, 4 or 5, and the biggest difference he made is he tried to interact, tried to have a lot of fun with us. He really stood out, even though he had a bit of a language barrier problem. He really tried his best to adapt to what we wanted.
The first thing I noticed about Seikoo was the fact that he was just so fast and mechanical. He wasn't really scared in going into our first scrim, and there were a couple of people that were quite nervous because we were an established team, so that was always a positive to go from the start.
Back at the end of the 21 season, the guys came to us, Eclipse especially, and said that the team was looking to replace Virtuoso. They came to us with 2 options. It was one player who was under contract, who I won't name, and one player, which was Seikoo, who was an unknown French talent, who was 17 years old, and as Eclipse put it to me, he's the fastest guy I've ever seen in the game. And it basically came to the fact of £10,000 for an experienced player, or Seikoo for free, who was a big risk at the time. We said to Eclipse, it's your choice. Since the guys as well, it's your choice. Whichever one you go with, we'll back you and we'll go with it. And they went for Seikoo. And the rest is history, really. Look how good he's done this year. One of the MVPs of the year.
While the off-season was dominated by the likes of German Amigos and Carmine Corp, Endpoint came into the 2021-2022 season unfancied. No tournament wins in the off-season, with their best result a semi-final finish at the Community Open. Nobody would have predicted what was to come at the first regional event of the season, the European Open. With the Endpoint boys at boot camp and receiving a visit from some very handsome friends, hello, Endpoint made it through the opening Swiss, with victories over SK, Dignitas, and Team Queso, with a defeat to Misfits the only blemish. But this meant a rematch with Misfits on Saturday to qualify for Championship Sunday. Endpoint were into the top 4 of the first regional. Next up though was a daunting task. Carmine Corp, fresh off their victory in the WePlay Invitational. Surely this was the end of what had been an outstanding run for Endpoint.
Draw into the ceiling, not the best touch ever, especially as Relating Wave removes Itachi from the pitch.
Huge.
Over the top of the final defender and below the crossbar. Seikoo makes it 3, and Game 7 between Endpoint and KC is here.
Endpoint were in the final of their first regional event for a year, and once again the task was Herculean. They needed to win 2 best-of-7 series over Team BDS, the giants of European Rocket League, and Endpoint took them down. Seikoo, overnight, went from being a prodigy known in the French scene to being the breakout star of the entire RLCS, with the highest goals per game ratio in the entire competition and mechanics to die for. What had seemed like a surprise signing back in July had catapulted Endpoint from also-rans to the top of the Rocket League pile. With Endpoint back at bootcamp, it was a familiar story in Swiss. 3 wins, a single defeat, and a place in the Saturday playoff bracket, where they would need to get revenge to reach Championship Sunday. This time the opponents, once again, were Carmine Corp, and it went a bit better than last time. Another tough opponent would follow. This time it was Dignitas, the winners of the second regional event, arguably the best mechanical team in the world, with some youngster called apparently Jack leading them. And, well, Seikoo decided to pop off.
Board Seikoo, the mechanical star from Endpoint. Slots it. Maybe he could end it here. Seikoo! Are you kidding me?
And with qualification for the full major assured, the pressure was off. They blitzed Semper Esports with another 2-0 best of sets win to become the #1 seed from Europe for the upcoming full major in Stockholm. With all eyes on the new kings of Europe, the LAN environment of Stockholm was brutal. Legends fell, new kings arose, and one thing was constant. Seikoo would not stop scoring.
Big clear for AJ as well. Seikoo trying to get around him. He's going to. Now what can Seikoo do? On the air dribble!
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that is utterly godly from the new man on Endpoint. What a send upfield with the pre-flip, catches it to perfection. Say goodbye, Illusion.
You see Seikoo with that turn there in the midfield. He's got a battle through all of G2, doing a good job so far. Seikoo, he does it! Oh, Seikoo with the tie!
Put this man in a straitjacket. Seikoo's gone psycho.
Look at that fake. Oh my goodness. And then into the flick. G2 had no idea.
Endpoint were able to defeat former champions Vitality and NRG in the Swiss stage, but a narrow defeat to BDS left them on the verge of elimination, with a tough game against NA veterans G2 in the way of them and the playoffs. Endpoint took down G2, but a third North American matchup proved too strong, as FaZe Clan became the first team to out-flip reset the French flip reset king. A quarter-final finish at their first RLCS LAN, though, was no mean feat, and Endpoint set to work trying to make sure they could continue on the path to the World Championships. Meanwhile, Seikoo turned enough heads to finish number 10 on the Octane.gg Players of 2021, despite only playing one split of RLCS. A flawless run through the group stage of Winter Regional 1 set them on track for a top 4 finish, as Relating Wave proved that even COVID cannot slow him down, but Dignitas can. Following a disappointing bootcampless regional, the bootcamp buff was sought again for Regional 3, where Endpoint topped their group, swept Luminosity in the upper semi-finals, and defeated Dignitas, despite the best efforts of their internet. Bootcamping from our dear leader Pete's house for the final, however, they found the all-conquering Team Queso too strong, and had to settle for another runners-up finish. Flying out to Los Angeles for the Winter Major, Seikoo once again proved his talent by scoring most of Endpoint's goals in victories over Renegades, yes we got him this time, and NRG. But a narrow defeat by Furia in the tiebreaker, seconds away from a Game 5 decider, sent Endpoint into the lower bracket. where FaZe Clan were waiting. Despite the hopes of fans across the world, especially us, there would be no revenge arc. Endpoint would not play in front of fans at the YouTube theatre, going home in 9th to 12th place. It was not the end to this story that Seikoo's fans would be looking for, but there's a lot of Seikoo's story left to tell, from humble beginnings, bouncing back from a ban, and an opportunity he was given with Endpoint, which he took with both hands. The Little Prince of Rocket League is just getting started.
Even if 2-0 is too much to come back from, but here's Seikoo!
Oh, marked by 8, playing nuisance on Mensa there. Oh, hold on. Might have put him out of position. Seikoo gets the ball.
That one narrowly missed from Endpoint, but they're still waiting and looking for that first goal.
Oh, Seikoo!